Caitlin Clark just put together one of the most dominant performances of her entire WNBA career. She didn't just put up points. She didn't just play good basketball. She took complete control. She orchestrated an offense. She made everyone around her better. And with 14 assists and a monster double-double, she led the Indiana Fever to their 4th consecutive win. But here's what makes this story truly explosive. She did it her way. Not Stephanie White's way. Not the system that had been limiting her all season. Her way. Clark-style basketball. And now the entire league is watching what happens when you actually let your best player play like herself. It all started earlier in the season with frustration. The Indiana Fever had the #1 pick in the draft. They had Caitlin Clark, the biggest name in women's basketball. They had a generational talent who was supposed to transform their franchise. And yet, through the first month and a half of the season, something wasn't working. The Fever were struggling. They had an up-and-down record. They were losing games they should have been winning. And fans were asking one question over and over again: what's wrong with this team? The answer, according to many critics, was the system. Stephanie White, the head coach, had implemented a strategy that wasn't maximizing Caitlin Clark's talents. White wanted to play fast. She wanted to push the pace. She wanted to move the basketball around the perimeter. But a lot of that system involved using Clark off the ball. It involved having her cut and move and play without the ball in her hands constantly. It was a system designed to spread the floor and create spacing. But it wasn't a system designed for a point guard who thrived on having high usage, who loved running the offense, who made her teammates better by getting them the basketball in rhythm. Fans were frustrated. Analysts were pointing it out. Social media was blowing up about it. Why isn't Clark playing the way she played in college at Iowa? Why isn't she running the offense? Why is she sitting in the corner as a spot-up shooter? These were the questions being asked night after night. The narrative was building that Stephanie White didn't know how to use her best player. Then came May 30th. The Fever played the Portland Fire. And Caitlin Clark looked absolutely dominant in the first few minutes. She was scoring. She was getting her teammates involved. She was running the show. The Fever jumped out to an 8-2 lead. Everything was clicking. The crowd was into it. You could feel the energy. This is what they came to see. And then Stephanie White made a decision. With 6:30 left in the first quarter, while the Fever were up 8-2, White took Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull all out of the game at the same time. Just pulled all 3 starters off the floor. The bench came in. And Portland went on a 13-2 run. The 8-point lead disappeared. The momentum vanished. And the Fever never recovered. Portland won that game by 16 points. It was a blowout loss. It was one of the most frustrating performances of the season. And the criticism was swift. Fans couldn't believe it. Why would you take your best player out when you had the lead and the team was playing well? Why would you interrupt the flow? Why would you make that substitution? It made no sense. And people were furious. They were saying, this is what's been wrong with the Fever all season. This coach doesn't understand how to use Caitlin Clark. But then something changed. Maybe it was the criticism. Maybe it was the performance waking them up. Maybe it was Clark and White having a conversation. Maybe it was the coaching staff recognizing what was happening. But the adjustments started coming. The first big adjustment was minutes. Clark's average time on the court had been dropping. She was playing around 30 minutes per game. But that changed. Gradually, her minutes started increasing. By the last 3 games, she was averaging 35.7 minutes per game. That's a significant jump. That's giving your best player more opportunity to impact the game. The second adjustment was even more important. Clark started getting the ball in her hands more. Instead of being relegated to off-ball cuts and spot-up shots, she started running the offense. She started orchestrating the play. She started playing point guard the way she wanted to play it. She was handling the basketball. She was making decisions. She was controlling the tempo. She was doing what she does best. And everything changed. The wins started coming. 1 win. Then 2 wins. Then 3 wins. And then the momentum kept building. The Fever were suddenly in third place in the Eastern Conference. They were climbing the standings. They were looking like legitimate contenders. And Caitlin Clark was putting up monster numbers. Then came the game that nobody saw coming. Clark put together a performance that was reminiscent of her Iowa days. She dropped 14 assists. 14. That's an astronomical number. That's a point guard who is completely in control. That's a player who is making her teammates better on every single possession. She also had a double-double, scoring in double figures while dishing out 14 of her teammates' baskets. The Fever crushed their opponent. It wasn't even competitive. This was a team playing with swagger. This was a team that believed in itself. This was a team that had found its identity. And that identity was Caitlin Clark running the show. Clark-style basketball. Not Stephanie White's system. Clark's system. A system built around getting the best player the ball and letting her make plays. Now here's where it gets really interesting. There was a game against Connecticut where something viral happened. In the final moments, there was a specific play that Stephanie White drew up. A specific play that she wanted the team to run. A play that was supposed to happen. But something different happened instead. Caitlin Clark, with her basketball intelligence, with her understanding of the game, seemingly overturned what White had called. She and Sophie Cunningham ran a different play. A play that they thought was better. A play that they thought would work against Connecticut's defense. And it worked. The play was successful. The Fever won the game. But the interesting part was that people noticed. The internet noticed. Analysts noticed. Everyone was saying the same thing. Did Caitlin Clark just overrule her coach? Did the player take over? Is this what's going to happen now? Clark playing her basketball, not White's basketball? It created this narrative. And the narrative was that even when the coach draws something up, Clark's basketball instincts are so good, her understanding of the game is so refined, that she can improve on the coaching decision in real time. She can see what the opponent is doing and adjust on the fly. She can take the framework that White provides and elevate it. She can make it better. Some people saw this as a problem. They said, this shows there's friction. This shows there's a lack of respect for the coach's authority. But others looked at it differently. They said, this shows that the Fever are at their best when Clark has the freedom to play. When she's not constrained by rigid system parameters. When she can trust her instincts and execute on the court. And the wins kept coming. The Fever went to 4 straight wins. 4 consecutive victories. And in that stretch, Clark was playing at an elite level. She was everywhere. She was scoring when she needed to score. She was setting up her teammates. She was playing defense. She was rebounding. She was doing everything. Through the first 13 games of the season, Clark was averaging 20.3 points per game. She was also averaging 7.8 assists per game. Those numbers might not sound astronomical compared to some elite point guards, but here's the thing. She was doing this while the team was winning. She was doing this while the Fever were becoming a playoff contender. She was doing this while elevating everyone around her. Aaliyah Boston was putting up 17 points and grabbing 8.4 rebounds per game. Kelsey Mitchell was averaging 20.3 points, tied with Clark for team-high scoring. The entire offense was clicking. And it was clicking because Clark had the freedom to run it her way. Now the question became, was Stephanie White the problem, or was the system the problem? Because here's the thing about coaching in the modern NBA or WNBA. You have to adapt. You have to be flexible. You have to understand your personnel. You have to build a system around your best players, not force your best players into a system that doesn't suit them. Stephanie White wanted to play fast. She wanted to move the basketball. She wanted a high-pace, high-volume three-point shooting type of offense. Those are all modern basketball principles. Those are all things that can win championships. But those principles don't necessarily mean taking the basketball out of your best playmaker's hands. What started happening in the second half of the season, what led to the winning streak, was a hybrid approach. White's system for pace and spacing, combined with Clark's ball handling and orchestration. Fast basketball, but with Clark controlling the tempo. Lots of three-point shooting, but with Clark facilitating the offense. Movement and cutting, but also Clark's ability to create on the fly. And that combination was unstoppable. When the Fever played that way, they won. When they tried to force the Stephanie White system without letting Clark run things, they lost. It became that simple. The evidence was undeniable. The games showed it. The statistics showed it. The wins and losses showed it. Caitlin Clark's 14-assist performance against the opponent was the perfect encapsulation of what this team was capable of when everything aligned properly. She wasn't just playing basketball. She was orchestrating a symphony. Every pass she made led to an open three-pointer. Every decision she made created an easy bucket for a teammate. She was playing at a level that most point guards never reach. And Stephanie White was smart enough to recognize it. White was adaptive enough to understand that the system needed to change. White was confident enough in her coaching ability to adjust based on what the team needed, rather than stubbornly holding onto preconceived notions of how the game should be played. That's actually the sign of a good coach. That's actually what separates the good coaches from the great coaches. The ability to look at what's working and lean into it. The ability to see that a player is thriving under certain conditions and double down on those conditions. The ability to be flexible when flexibility is required. Some fans still complained. Some people on social media still tried to create narratives about drama and division. But the wins were undeniable. The record was undeniable. Caitlin Clark was undeniable. When you win 4 games in a row, when your best player is putting up monster double-doubles, when you're climbing the standings, you can talk about drama and controversy all you want, but the evidence is on the court. And that's ultimately what matters in sports. That's ultimately what people care about. Not the drama. Not the social media narratives. Not the speculation. The basketball. The wins. The growth. The belief that this team is building something special. As the season continued, as the Fever kept winning, as Caitlin Clark continued to thrive playing her style of basketball, the entire dynamic of the franchise changed. The whispers about tension with the coach faded. The criticism about the system quieted down. Because success silences all that noise. Because winning is the ultimate answer to every question. Caitlin Clark proved once again why she's the most talented player in women's basketball. Stephanie White proved that she could adapt and adjust. The Fever proved that when they play their basketball, when they let Clark run the show, when they combine her talents with their other weapons, they are absolutely dangerous. They are contenders. They are a team that can compete with anyone. That's the real story of the winning streak. That's the real story of the 14 assists and the monster double-double. It wasn't about drama. It wasn't about conflict. It was about a basketball player being allowed to play basketball her way. It was about a system adapting to a generational talent. It was about a team finally clicking. And in the WNBA, where Caitlin Clark has transformed the league, where she drives the narrative, where she's the biggest story in women's basketball, that matters. That impacts the entire league. Because when Clark thrives, the league thrives. When the Fever are winning with Clark playing at an elite level, everyone wins.